I'm pretty passionate about health and safety. Like all of you out here, I'm a practitioner of health and safety. I manage a business, and what drives me is every day on our building sites we have over 300 people more or less coming on and off our sites, and to me that's 300 families that I have to keep safe, and I take that responsibility really, really personally. So we've got that ethic happening in our business. We're trying to develop that culture. Where do we sit, Jim? I reckon we're about 3.5, because we hope to be at 4 one day, but it's a long, long journey, and it's hard work, but it's not rocket science. I first got, my light went on in my head in health and safety about 26 years ago. I was a carpenter working on a commercial building site, and one of my jobs was securing or unsecuring massive big 5-ton precast columns, and I used to run up this 30-foot ladder, not sure what that's about, and unsecure this massive big bolt on the end of a crane strop. And I was all decked out in PEP gear. I had the latest Adidas sneakers so I could sprint around the building sites. I had a tool belt as my protective gear. I had a black singlet, which was my high vis because it gave me a really good suntan. I used to wear Ray-Bans to protect my eyes, and I had a wicked Sony Walkman for my noise control. And I had a pretty stunning mullet to protect my head. So anyway, one day I was sprinting up the 30-foot ladder, and I was taking the big crane screw off, and I used to have this big sort of what I call my screwdriver, which is a big bit of Rio with a flat bit of metal welded onto it. And I'm not sure that's doing that. But anyway, I used to get this thing and crank it off and crank the crane screw off and let the strop go. So one day I'd run up the ladder, I'd secured the acro prop, and the acro prop was in the road of the ladder, so I was leaning out, and I was screwing, and this thing went flying out of my hands. And I was 6 stories up, and I slipped off the ladder, I grabbed hold of the top of the column, I pooed my pants, I looked down, and as I was looking down, my mate CB was on the first floor, and he had his head out the window, and he was sanding off a bit of the concrete in the exterior of the building. And this crane screw just flew by and took a couple of locks of hair off his mullet. And I just looked, and where did the light go on for me? It didn't go on for me when I leapt off the ladder and jumped on the acro prop in the column. It didn't go off for me when the screw went past, flying past his head and almost killed him. CB was a Samoan guy. The light didn't go off for me when he turned his head around and yelled at me. His little brown face went purple, and he wasn't speaking Samoan to me. It was a different kind of language, but I knew what he meant. The light didn't go off for me then. Where the light went off for me, and it's related back to families, was later on that night, about 6:30. I used to train a young fella's footy team, and I went to footy training that night, and CB's young boy, he was 10, came running up to me and said, "Hey Rob, did you see Dad at work today?" And I sort of thought to myself, yeah, I did, and I almost killed him. And I often think back, and when I pulled this picture up out of Google the other day, that's what came into my mind, and that's when I realised that, for me fundamentally, that's when I started thinking about this stuff, because 26 years ago on commercial building sites, we used to chase the work-safe people off the site. We used to tell them to piss off. They used to say, "Why aren't you wearing harnesses?" We didn't know what harnesses were. So it's amazing to think 26 years ago, it's taken that long, and that's just me personally, to finally get into this right space about health and safety. So that's just something to share with you. Look, I know you've seen a lot of stuff around the real stuff about critical risk today. You've had some really awesome experts here talk about it, so I'm not going to bore you about it and try and teach you about it, but for me personally, it's managing the really crucial, dangerous hazards that we have out on our sites. And we've got them all. There's the 8 key critical risks that the Charter have identified that exist in our construction sites today. Working on height, for me as a residential builder, I hate looking at the slide at the moment. 2 weeks ago I had a building site shut down. One of the PMOs that we report to went onto our site and shut it down. Just looking for him, he's in here somewhere. Thanks, Grant. But look, they did the right thing, and as a business we were really, really disappointed for this to happen, because we've worked really, really hard with all our subcontractors and everybody involved in our food chain to make sure that this doesn't happen. So what happened is we had the scaffolding on site, we had the nets, the scaffolding was still halfway putting up. The principal carpenter on the site was over in Aussie and he had his boys on the site. And what did they want to do? What was the root cause? They wanted to impress the boss to make sure they got the trusses up by the time he got back. And these young fellas knew the rules, they knew everything else, but it was really just that human element, trying to impress, you know. But like I used to sprint around the building sites in my Adidas, you know, wanted to get the job done and look really, really good. And look, when we rang the guy in Australia and said this has happened, when we found out it had happened, we were all devastated because it's not where we wanted to be. But my reaction was I rang the young PMO, the young project manager that shut us down, and honestly I rang him up and I didn't speak Samoan to him, but I congratulated him and thanked him for doing it. And why did I thank him? Because he probably prevented an injury, more than likely did. He prevented Catherine's mob coming along and finding me as well, so that was good. You know, we lost 2 days production over it, but it really taught us a lesson that this whole thing is ongoing. Just because you've got your triple SPs and your scaffolding and your safety nets and all that sort of stuff going on, and it's ongoing. The human element's always there. People are always going to have brain explosions and do things wrong, so never ever take it for granted. If you've got the right processes and systems and all the rest of it, it's just going to happen, because it ain't. You've got that human factor that's just so key, and without the human factor nothing happens, but it's always a risk on site. To me, people are a critical risk. Look, here's just some quick pictures on some of the critical risks that we're looking at there. I suggested to Duncan this morning this could be a skirt job. He smacked me. So sorry about that, Duncan, but no, it's not. We've got better practice of that going on in here in Canterbury, and that's a great thing. This is, for me, you know, on our sites, is these are some of the guys we forget about. How critical are these guys to what we do? We build houses for families. We've got to make sure that they're wired up properly. You know, we walk in and out of buildings all day and we never think about the risk around electricity. It's huge. So we rely on these guys so much, but they're almost invisible on our sites at times. Asbestos. You know, this guy's in a modern building just like this one here. And Mike Flanagan's in here somewhere, aren't you, Mike, from ACC? Where are you, Mike? Mike, how many asbestos-related products have you identified in buildings? 140, yeah. And that's huge. I wouldn't have guessed there's 140 products out there in our homes and factories and offices, but it's everywhere. So that's something to be really aware of. Excavation, that kind of says it all. You know, the hot works, these guys are outstanding. They've got their high-vis gear on, they've got their hard hats and gloves and masks, and they're looking behind them to see where they've been rather than thinking about where they're going. Workplace violence, this is something we don't think about a lot, and I'd like to think on a lot of our sites around town there's not a great deal of it happening. There's a photo of some blokes in an office. Actually, when I googled workplace violence, it was amazing that 95% of the images came up with women fighting each other. And but I didn't want to be sexist, so we put it there. But there was a couple of other slides that when I sort of googled into this, it interested me. And there's something we can all look at here, because I think being involved with the rebuild, there's a lot of frustration out there. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of really, really hurt and sore people for a whole pile of reasons. And it's something we really have to be aware of. And it really comes back to that whole health and safety, well-being type of factor. But, you know, look out for confusion and frustration and blame and anger and hostility. And the number 3 one there, if you see blame happening in your business, in your office or on your sites, something's going wrong there. Because, you know, if you live in a blame culture, you live below the line. Get away from the blame and live above the line and take responsibility. So if you're starting to see the blame culture exist in your business, yeah, look out and start addressing it. It's not healthy. So look, my presentation's not long. I'm just reinforcing some of the things there. There's Grant Craig, our poster boy for the charter. Where are you, Grant? We're out here somewhere. There he is, got his head down. Thanks, Grant. You do a great job for us. Look, the comms group, Christina and her group, have developed some really good resource and collateral around this whole thing. As it was said earlier, Hirepool have made a really good commitment to our industry. They're putting all these posters up in the dunnies. There's a lot of employees spend a lot of time in dunnies, usually on the boss's time as well. But look, it's just that whole way of reinforcing what's going on, what are the critical risks, am I safe today, you know? And I think that's a really cool question for everybody to keep asking themselves. Some really excellent toolbox talks, resources that have been developed. And these are all on the Charter website. These are all there for you to download and print off and work with your own business and with your subcontractors. For our business, we're placing a lot of emphasis on our subcontractors and their toolbox talks and what they can add to our triple SP and practices on site. And this kind of resource is ideal. I know Jim talked about 4 themes, but we're a bit smaller here in New Zealand, so we've got 3. And it's really simple. identify, assess and manage. And if you can start sort of breaking stuff down there and keep your health and safety simple, keep it easy. It's not rocket science, it's quite simple. It's just a matter of tapping into it and finding the resources. And what can you do in your own business? What can I do in my business? That top thing's really important to me is having that leadership and the worker support and supporting your workers. We talked about culture earlier, culture and health and safety. Without a positive, correct culture, we don't have it. And leadership delivers culture. Leadership isn't just business owners or CEOs and whatnot. Leadership's right across the spectrum. I'm privileged enough to be a judge on the local Apprentice of the Year, and I meet these young apprentices, and often they are the leaders in health and safety on their building sites. They're the young guys that are driving it. They're the next generation coming through, and they're smart, and they're really delivering on it. And so I'd encourage you to actually start engendering leadership in your young people, in your labourers, on your foremen, all those sort of people on your site. Everybody can display leadership and lead by example. And if you get that kind of thing going on, you're going to have an amazing health and safety culture, and you're going to keep your family safe. Make sure you've got the resources, everything that's available around your risk. Once you do your analysis and you understand what's there, put all the resources in place. Don't be tired about it, because it's a false economy. If you don't deliver on it, it'll cost you a lot more money in the long run. Toolbox talks, site audits, look around your sites, get out on site, talk to your people. I don't get out on site enough. I wish I could get out more, but when I do, it's amazing what you learn. You can't beat being at the coalface. And support your subbies. In the Charter, we're blessed in the Charter because there's a lot of industry leaders who've signed the Charter. That's fantastic, they're leading by example. But the real at-risk group are the smaller SMEs, and the small out of the SMEs is the key one. There's so many 2, 3, 4, 5-man bands out there. They're the people we want signing the Charter and buying into these commitments and putting these practices on site. So if you've got subcontractors in your business, support them, train them, encourage them, just get them, and please drive hard to get them to sign the Charter. It's a really easy thing to do. And, we'd love to see more Charter signing ceremonies. Those signing ceremonies, a lot of you have been to those. When we walk into that room, everybody's an equal. Doesn't matter who you are or what you are, you're all there for the same purpose. And we want to see all those small contractors involved. But we need your support to get those people to be signed up. And, the bottom line there, health and safety training, get informed, get upskilled and seek advice. And Duncan spoke, earlier about a sort of a collegial attitude. Is talk to each other. I talk to other builders, they're my competitors, but I talk to them a lot about health and safety. I talk to our PMOs, we talk to Arrow and Hawkins and other people involved in the rebuild. Feed us information, guys. We're not the best, we want to be the best, but help us get there. It's so important. And look, just, like Sarge used to say, let's be careful out there. It's that simple, let's think about it. And some of those lines there, it's essential to look after each other. Look at your mate, look at your girlfriend, are you safe on site? And don't put people down for speaking up, encourage that. If people don't talk about it and say, hey boss, there's something wrong here, people are going to get hurt. And if we have a culture that slams people for putting their hand up, well, we've got it all wrong. And we will get through this rebuild hurting people and maybe even have fatalities. And what a fantastic stat. Stats Duncan was talking about earlier were done in 2013, early then. They predicted we'd kill 1 or 2 people a year. So far, so good. And, let's keep it that way. And, everybody in this room is part of that success to date. And then again, just your 3 steps. Identify, assess and manage. It's that simple. So thanks for your time today. Cheers.